Hey, everybody. I am Kevin Iole. That, of course, is Dana White. UFC 307 is in Salt Lake City. Alex Pereira defends the light heavyweight championship against Khalil Roundtree Jr. Dana, a lot to get into. And I guess I want to go back a little bit to start. We haven't heard from you about UFC Paris, and I thought, quite a show. I talked to Fares Ziam today, and he said to me that in France now, MMA was not legal until January 1st, 2020. He said MMA is now the second biggest sport in France behind only soccer. Just, I guess you kind of would have probably figured that from having been in France and seeing those crowds. But what's your reaction to hearing someone who lives there say that?
No, I mean, it's awesome when you think about the fact that it was so hard for us to get legalized in France, and now to be the number 2 sport there is obviously massive. Plus, the fans are insane there. It literally translates onto television. When you're watching it on TV, and it sounds like the biggest pay-per-view you've ever seen when you're watching it. It's fascinating.
Yeah, it was really, really wild. And I want to get your reaction to Renato Moicano, first of all, in the main event. That was just really an incredible performance by him. After what we found out later with the shoulder injury that he had, what was your take on Moicano handling Benoit Saint-Denis so easily, so easily, period, let alone the shoulder?
Yeah, I mean, you and I were talking during that. You're the one that I saw that sticking out, but I was like, man, it just must be the way his shoulder looks like, I've seen guys with goofy shoulders. No, you were right. He broke it, fought like a savage, and completely dominated him in that fight. I mean, that first round was 10-8, could have even been a 10-7.
Yeah, that was really amazing. Were you disappointed at all?
On the fight? Yeah. Did you see the scores?
No. They were all 10-8.
They're all 10-8?
Yeah, they're all 10-8. And then Saint-Denis won the second round. Were you disappointed in Saint-Denis? Here's a guy that got a fight against Dustin Poirier, then comes back in a fairly big fight against Moicano. And I thought he kind of like, I don't want to say shit the bed, but he certainly was not impressive in that fight.
Yeah, I don't know if the word disappointed would come to mind. You don't know. I mean, the guy had a ton of hype around him. You don't know. When you start to break up into the 10-5-3 area in the UFC, it is a whole nother level. And
right.
It's very clear that he wasn't ready. Obviously a talented guy, but just not ready.
And you mentioned breaking into the top 10 or top 5, and that brings up Moicano because, of course, he's been pretty loud on social media about the rankings, the new UFC rankings. He's number 11 right now. Did not move up after that performance. How does that get you?
Let's get into this. Khamzat Chimaev is number 12. Okay, Max Holloway is number 10. The guy he knocked out is number 3. So I got to find some media guys that know the fight sport, that understand the sport of fighting, that are actually doing the rankings. So the rankings are definitely a problem. Moicano, I agree with you 100%. But don't worry, my friend. AI will be here soon, and this will all be fixed. We get all these bums that know nothing about fighting out of this shit and get AI in here, and we can fix all these rankings. I could go through this board for a fucking hour with you about the rankings and the MMA media.
And and of course I should just say I am not voting in those rankings. So, but
why not? Why not? Should be. Let's get some people in there that know what the fuck they're talking about.
Well, at least we talked. I know you were working on a potential new ranking system. So I talked to Christoph Grossing, one of your employees, and he's working on a plan. So it was impressive. We had a long conversation about it. So we'll see what happens.
Before I get into about Max Holloway being number 10 in the lightweight division when Justin Gaethje is number 3.
Well, here's how I would answer that. I don't agree with that given what happened in the fight, but here's how I think that happens, Dana. Take college football. You have number 5 play number 25, right? So if number 25 beats number 5, they never move all the way up to number 5. They might move from 25 to 15 or 16, and number 5 moves down from 5 to 10, right? That's generally how it works. Like people say, okay,
this ain't college football where every year a team is fucking different with different players. Max Holloway's one of the greatest fighters in the history of the fucking sport.
I agree.
College football shouldn't even be mentioned when you talk about this sport. Okay.
I'm glad we're not talking about John Jones today, because we would really
John
go
Jones,
off.
we can talk about him too. We could talk about Holloway. We could talk about Hamza Chimaev. We could go through this thing all day and all night.
Okay.
One of my biggest problems with this sport is most of the people that cover it have no fucking clue what they're talking about, know nothing about the sport. But anyway, you probably want to move on and ask me some other questions right now.
Tuesday is your matchmaking day. And you know, I wonder, and I wonder, as you're sitting in there, is Conor McGregor's name come up? We saw that live stream. I texted you the other day. He did a live stream for Dual Bits, and I guess, you know, somebody called him inebriated. You know, one of the fighters said, you know, a lot of bad things about him. To me, what I saw, Dana, in the bit that I watched of that live stream, is a guy who is not close to being ready to fight. What is your reaction to what he did on that live stream, and where is Conor in terms of coming back to be an athlete and compete?
Well, number one, I didn't see it. I didn't see the live stream. You had said something to me about it. And number two, I said that Conor wasn't fighting until 2025. Mm-hmm. It is October 1st of 2024. Right. Conor McGregor has plenty of time.
So it seems to me like, you know, probably March would be a good time for him, right? I mean, is that your Vegas fight? That's a big, you know, generally a big show on the calendar. Would that be a fair assessment when we might think about seeing him?
I'm going to go with 2025.
Not any more specific than that, huh?
Yeah, 2025.
All right. Alex Pereira is defending. You know, Alex Pereira will have fought probably 50 times by the time Conor McGregor gets back into action. And Alex is defending his belt against number 8 Khalil Rountree. And you know, yesterday I did an interview with 3. I know you ripped the MMA media, but I don't think you're going to rip Daniel Cormier, Chael Sonnen, or Teddy Atlas. And I spoke to the 3 of them yesterday, and I said, what kind of chance does Khalil Rountree have to win this fight? And I wrote a story, and how does the fight go? And all of them, and Chael is outright picking Khalil to win the fight. And Daniel and Teddy say it's no big shock if he does win it, that he has the capability of winning the fight. Having said that, let's go to the rankings. He was ranked number 8, and you made a fight a week or two before that for number 2, Magomed Ankalaev. Why did you make an Ankalaev fight when he was number 2, when you knew Alex was going to be in the mix here very shortly?
I don't remember exactly what the timing of that was, but we didn't make a fight. At the time we made the Khalil Rountree fight, Ankalaev already had a fight.
Right. So, and that's what I'm asking you. So Ankalaev was fighting Alexander Rakic. You made that fight maybe 2.5 weeks before you made Rountree versus Alex. And I was surprised that you would put a number 8 guy in, not criticizing Khalil, because I feel like Daniel and Chael, that Khalil is a good fighter and it'll make a fun fight.
And we did too.
But just the is that the reason why you made the fight as opposed to Ankalaev? Just the fact that it might be a bombs away showdown?
I mean, eventually when we made the fight, that's why we made it. But I don't remember the timing of everything that happened. But Ankalaev had a fight. Listen, Ankalaev's ranked number 2. He goes out and puts on an unbelievable performance, and Alex is still the champion, then he's next.
Right. Now, you know, Mike Bond from MMA Junkie, he's known for putting up stats and everything. And he came up with something today that I wasn't aware of, and I thought was really interesting. And I know you're a stats person, so you'll probably appreciate this. Ronda Rousey holds the record for most for 3 title defenses in the shortest period of time right now, 189 days. If Alex Pereira wins on Saturday night, it will be 175 days with 3 title defenses. I mean, in the UFC at the highest level, when he's fighting Yuri Prochazka, Jamal Hill, and now Khalil Rountree, that is one of the greatest feats in the history of the sport. Wouldn't you agree?
I don't disagree. That's fascinating and true. I agree with that 100%. And if you look at, again, the fact that he came from kickboxing and was able to accomplish everything he's accomplished in such a short amount of time, it really is awesome.
I know you had said previously, Dana, that, you didn't see it. You thought he might struggle on the ground and that type of thing. And that's a natural reaction. I think everybody thought that. What was the first fight that Alex fought that you said, dude, this guy may be somebody, like he may be a special fighter?
Well, I felt the same way about Israel too.
Mm-hmm.
When Israel came in, I thought he was going to have a lot of problems with somebody who could wrestle really well and strike. But both of them, I mean, what's even crazier when you look at the two guys and, their history together, and that they both come into the UFC, dominate, and fight each other again multiple times. It's a fascinating story. I mean, this could be a 30 for 30. It's
Right.
such a cool story. But I mean, I would have to say, as soon as the guy started to break into the top 5, you start to go, holy shit, now he's going to do it too. And yeah, no, it really is fascinating, the history between these two, and coming from one style like kickboxing and being able to dominate the way that they both have. I don't mean to take anything away from Alex by talking about Izzy, but those two are always going to be connected for the rest of their lives.
Of course, yeah. How much they fought each other and everything that they did. And the thing I love about Alex, like, he's talking about making history, and he said to ESPN, I believe it was it was the Schmo. He said it. He said to the Schmo that he wants to go back to 185 and fight Dricus if he's successful against Khalil. And he said the weight cut was tough before, but he's had a rest and he hasn't had to cut weight, and he wants to go back. Just the fact that he thinks that way, right? That's kind of what separates him from a lot of other guys, right? He's thinking of,
right. That's why people love him.
Right.
And every time Hunter and Mick pick up the phone and call this guy, he never says no.
Right.
Never says no. Never any pushback with this guy. Never any. I mean, he's the type of fighter that fighters are fans of. That's the type of guy he is. Yeah, and that's why people love him.
So to follow up one last question about Alex, he said to me last week when I spoke to him, he brought up the fact that you came out and said you were going to do boxing again. I don't know if it's Zuffa boxing or whatever the name might be. And he said, I love boxing. I just sparred with the Brazil heavyweight champion. I want to box and give that a shot. Whenever that happens, whenever you get into boxing, and you said at the Callum Walsh fight, you're in, will you give Alex Pereira a shot to actually put boxing gloves on it and go that route?
I don't know. I mean, when you look at where he is right now in his career, he's at the top of the game. He's about to break this record. Like you said, if he wins the fight on Saturday night, and God knows what other records he could break here. He's 38 years old, which is even more impressive when you can add that on top of everything else. I don't know. I'm not even thinking about that kind of stuff. I'm not thinking about crossover fight. I hate crossover fights, and it's not really. I respect the fact that he wants to do it, and I know there's tons of other fighters that probably want to do it, but I want everybody to stay in their own lane.
Let me ask you one question then about Francis Ngannou doing that, right? So he fights the Tyson Fury fight, makes a shit ton of money. And I thought the fight wasn't very good, but because it was close and he knocked Tyson Fury down, he gets another fight against Anthony Joshua and makes an even bigger, pile of money. So I am not a fan of crossover fights, and I am always saying no, no, no. And that's one of my issues with Jake Paul, right? All these crossover fights that he does. But isn't Ngannou evidence that for some people it works, right? Because Ngannou made more money than he would have had he stayed either with you or been fighting MMA in the PFL, right?
That's not necessarily true.
Really?
Not necessarily true. That's the bullshit publicly that people believe, but that's not the truth.
Okay. So he would have made more. Okay.
Total bullshit.
All right. So we'll move on from that.
That's that whole myth that makes everybody go, oh, fucking go to boxing and all this fucking bullshit. Boxing don't work, Kevin.
Right.
Boxing doesn't.
Why doesn't it work? What is it? What is the thing that makes it? I have my own take, and I've written it many times.
What makes it work?
What makes it not work? What makes it struggle?
Fucking trillionaire to make fucking fights. Okay, and even Saudi trillionaires get tired of the fucking bullshit.
Has
it's all
Turkey
a fucking
said
myth. It's all a myth that puts out like the whole statement that you just made to me that's absolutely positively not true. It's those type of fucking statements and those type of quotes by the media that makes all this shit. All these fights are happening. It takes a Saudi fucking trillionaire. Every fucking guy that tries to do the boxing thing, they all end up losing shitloads of fucking money. And the model doesn't work. A Saudi unlimited amount of money pops up, and that's what makes these fights happen. And even guys with that kind of money get fucking tired of the bullshit.
So,
even though, and I got this whole thing every fucking day. I'm not kidding you, every day. Literally just said it to fucking him last night when he got home. Said it to fucking 3 other guys before that. At the fight in Ireland, I said I'm in. And then I start reading stuff and looking at stuff in the boxing world, and I literally say to myself every day, am I fucking crazy?
Yeah.
Why do I want to even think about doing this? I must be fucking nuts. It is the most fucked up business. And all these sound bites like the ones that you just had are all so full of shit that it makes everybody fucking believe that shit is true when it's not. And it makes everything worse. Anyway.
So one of the things that I had said, and I've written this many times, is I said, take a Floyd Mayweather, a Manny Pacquiao, whoever, whatever they get paid is fair because they're generating well more than that in revenue. So if Floyd Mayweather made $100 million, so be it, right? He's generating
100%.
that huge money back. But what I have written this many times and said most boxers are vastly overpaid, and that one of the issues in the sport is Anthony Joshua was not overpaid. He put 98,000 people in the seats at Wembley Stadium last week. But there's only a handful of people in the sport that do that. Do you feel like that is the number one thing? Like if you could redo the payroll and set it up differently, do you think boxing works if the pay structure is different than it is right now?
It has to be. It has to. If it doesn't, it absolutely doesn't work. The model's already been proven that it's broken and doesn't work. Number one. Number two, you're right. Anthony Joshua, Floyd Mayweather, Conor McGregor in our world and in that world. And the list goes on and on. There are guys who are big stars, and they are the guys that, when you talk about these big paydays, they're the guys that demand the most money. And to think that every boxing match that goes on should be paid like that, it just doesn't work. It's broken and it doesn't work. And everybody fucking knows it. But everybody wants to, talk all the bullshit about, oh, this guy made that much money, this guy made that much money. If you didn't have, a Saudi sheik running around right now, throwing the kind of money around that he is, right? None of these fights would have happened. It took a guy like him to make fights that other people couldn't make to happen.
So last question on that topic, and we will get back to the fights. So I would say this: I think I love what he's done in making fights, right? But I think he's long-term going to make it harder for boxing because he's paid so much money. Like, how do you get Terrence Crawford to fight somebody now after what he got paid to fight Madrimov in his last fight, right? All of a sudden, it just becomes this very difficult thing because Turkey's overpaying. They were overpaid before Turkey got here. Now Turkey comes in and is paying them 3 times or 4 times more. Like, isn't Turkey actually hurting the sport in a way by paying and throwing the money around the way he is?
He's not hurting the sport. He's a huge fan of the sport.
Yes.
And I think that everybody who gets involved in combat sports gets involved with good intentions. You're like, I think I can do this. I can make this better. I can do this. I can do that. And then you dive in and you learn quickly, very quickly, that that model is broken and needs to be fixed. And Shake Turkey understands that too.
He does. Okay. Well, good. Moving on, there's a couple of women's fights that I want to ask you about on UFC 307. But before I get to that, I want to ask you about Joaquin Buckley, right? He's a guy that doesn't get a lot of attention. And he got a lot of criticism, Dana, after his last fight, when in the ring, he called out Conor McGregor. Now, I think I'm the only person in the world that liked his call out. And I'll tell you why. I knew, and I said this to DC yesterday, I knew there's zero chance in the world of him ever fighting Conor McGregor. But when he calls out Conor McGregor, what happened? Everybody and his brother starts talking about Joaquin Buckley, and his name is on people's lips, which it hadn't been before. So what do you make of Buckley? And now he's feuding with DC, and everybody's looking forward to seeing DC and Buckley get together this week and whatnot. So what is your take on where Buckley stands and of that call out specifically?
I mean, listen, I think at one point everybody was calling out Conor McGregor. Everybody wanted to fight Conor McGregor. I mean, you asked me about Conor McGregor on this interview. He will bring you attention. He will bring you clicks. He will bring you attention. There's no doubt about it. It was probably a brilliant move by Buckley. People I say this all the time, whether people are cheering you or booing you, as long as they're talking about you, that's all that matters.
Yeah.
So
that is fun. Raquel Pennington, to me, one of the great stories in the UFC. Just, she was 9-7. She was 10-8. I don't know if she was close to being cut, but certainly, she was on a fast path to nowhere, right? I mean, just, mired in mediocrity. And all of a sudden, what has she won? 6 in a row, 7 of 8. She's now the UFC champion. And she's, Raquel, who might be the nicest person in the UFC, is talking a little smack about Kayla Harrison, right? Like, what all of a sudden has gotten into Raquel Pennington?
What did she say about Kayla?
Oh, I can't. I hope Kayla wins her fight so that I can end all this shit in the next fight.
That's awesome. Yeah, Raquel's one of the greatest humans on the planet. I love her. She's a really good kid. And I'm happy for everything that she's accomplished. And she has a great rivalry with Juliana Pena, too.
Yes.
And you know that this is going to be a great fight, that these two are both going to go in there and just go at it. And the great thing for them and for the division right now is Kayla. Kayla's waiting in the wings to fight whoever wins. So should be fun. She's got to get through, Vera first, but it's a great time right now for the women's bantamweight division.
Couple quick ones. Juliana Pena, to me, has always been a person that had star potential, right? She had the look, she had the fighting ability, she can win in multiple ways and everything. I asked her this last week and she had her take on it, but she doesn't get to the post often enough, in my opinion, right? She doesn't, she's not fighting on a regular basis. She fights, everybody gets excited about her, and then we don't hear from her for 18 months or 20 months. Do you think that's why she's not a bigger star right now than her talent and her personality would suggest she could be?
Well, I think she's battled some injuries is what's happened with her. But the thing is, when Juliana Pena's in a fight, you realize it's going to be a good fight because she's tough as nails. She's nasty. She's mean. And you're not getting a boring fight with Juliana Pena. Mm-hmm. She's going to come to – it should be a dog fight. And no matter who wins that fight, they both are a great fight for Kayla.
Yeah. No, we have to assume that Kayla
wins. I keep talking
Kayla wins.
She's going to win on Saturday, assuming she wins.
Are you surprised? Ketlen Vieira has got a pretty good record, and she's a black belt in jiu-jitsu and in judo, and yet it is minus 900 plus 600. Kayla Harrison's a 9-1 favorite, man-to-man. That seems a little high.
Very high. You can't make odds like that in the top 5 in the UFC. You can't.
So, very good. And last question about Kayla. I talked to her about this at length, and I wonder what you thought when you saw her walk in, like at UFC 300, after that weight cut that she went through. Like, you saw her at the weigh-in, she's almost unrecognizable, right? When she walked out to weigh in. And then in her fight, she became the big, strong, physical Kayla that you wanted. Were you relieved because, you signed this person and you don't know? I mean, she competed in the Olympics. She competed, Dana, in the Olympics at 172 pounds, right? And now she's fighting at 135, and she's getting older. It's not usually the way it goes, right? As I know. So, did you breathe a sigh of relief when you saw her, on fight night at UFC 300 and know, hey, she's there?
Yeah. Obviously ripped to shreds, jacked, an absolute specimen of an athlete. I mean, yeah, it's fascinating. But what's going to be interesting now is, like we were just talking about, Ketlen Vieira, she's ranked number 2. You got Pena number 1, Pennington, the champ. These are going to be some real fights for Kayla. This is, she's in a position now after all the things that she's accomplished in her career that, if she can beat these 3 girls, and because even if she beats, no matter who wins the title fight that night, she'll end up then defending against one of these girls. So
right.
she's got some real tough girls coming up down the line. Like I said, injecting her into this women's bantamweight division, it's going to make for an exciting end of this year and in 2025.
Last question for you, and you've been really generous with your time, so I thank you for it. The PFL does something that, I find interesting. They have, PFL Europe, PFL MENA, whatnot, blah, 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 blah. And as I'm thinking about you guys, I think, where is the one place in the world that is untapped martial arts talent? And that might be Asia, right? And you think, Zhang Weili is probably the only superstar to come out of, China right now. There's other good fighters, but right now the only superstar, Tatsuro Taira, might end up being great from Japan, but he's got to prove himself. He's got a tough fight next week. Do you feel like if you did something similar to that, UFC China or UFC Asia, and just put fights on over there, that you might be able to, kind of force feed it and accelerate the growth of MMA in that country?
Well, we do that.
In that region?
We have Road to the UFC fights.
Well, yeah, you have Road to the UFC. Yeah.
Yeah. We do that. You're probably the only guy on earth that's ever said the PFL does something interesting.
All right. Well, I guess with that, we will, Dana, I will see you at the Contender Series tonight.
And, we'll be in Macau. We got a fight coming in Macau here. In
Understood.
November.
Yeah, I get, the only thing I was saying was I know
we got a PI over there.
Right. And I get that. The only thing I was asking you was, I was just saying, on a regular basis, having AAA fights, for the lack of a better term, on a fairly regular basis to try to, because it seems to me you built the PI in 2016 in Shanghai? Is that what it was? 2000, and it seems like it seems like it's been slow going, and that's what I was getting at out of Asia.
Well, not really. I mean, with the Road to the UFC fights that we put on, I think we do those twice a year, and then when you start looking through, we do have Chinese talent that is in, throughout the board that's in the top 15, and a Chinese world champion. You would have to imagine that China was actually further away from this than Mexico. Yeah. And if you look at where we are now with Mexico, this stuff takes time. It doesn't happen overnight.
No doubt. That is Dana White. We will see him at UFC 307 on Saturday. Dana, I'll see you tonight at the Contender Series. Appreciate you, my man.
Thanks, buddy.